elections in Syria today. Arab and foreign journalists visit electoral centers and examine the voting process there. And President Assad congratulates President Putin on assuming his office today, as Putin asserts that Russia will confront challenges. Good afternoon, this is news in English from the Syrian Arab television in Damascus. The elections of the People's Assembly this year continued under the new constitution, which was adopted last February. Nearly 7,000 nominees are competing in 15 election departments. There are more than 12,000 election centers in various governorates of Syria. There are 250 seats. 127 seats are allocated for workers and peasants, while the rest are allocated for other categories. Every citizen has the right to cast his or her vote within the department in which he lives, after showing his identity card given by an official department or ministry, according to the provisions of the Article 21 of the Law of General Elections and its executive regulations issued by the Office of the Prime Minister.
7:00 a.m. polling stations opened to receive enthusiastic voters who determined to cast their ballots for the parliamentary elections, which came 3 months after the adoption of a new constitution that allows more pluralism and which stipulates that the elections would be supervised by a judiciary committee.
As a judiciary committee, we are touring all of the polling stations to make sure that the election process is transparent and fair and goes without any breaches. Up until now, the process goes well, and if there is any misunderstanding, we're giving our directives.
I chose the name of an opposition party, a new way for our country, for ideas, for thinking, for everything.
We are going to vote our deputies who are able to help and to lead the country into more stability.
About 7,000 candidates are competing for 250 seats in the parliament that many hoped it would keep up with their aspirations to maintain reforms.
This is a historical day in Syria. We are practicing our democracy in best ways. We hope that the next parliament will meet our aspirations for the best Syria.
I think that this election is, let me say, a reflect about the people's aspirations and hope. And I hope that the People's Assembly elections could reflect the hopes and the aspiration of these people and could answer their hopes and their needs, demands to develop our country.
To people, I trust in them. I hope they would work for our country. This is the first time in my life I cast vote.
What are you hoping for?
I'm hoping our country will be better.
Several foreign observers were present to make sure of the fairness and transparency of the elections.
We toured 3 polling stations. We have a very positive impression about the election process. We found a heavy turnout for voting, and we saw the citizens coming enthusiastically without being obliged to participate in the elections. We found secret balloting boxes to cast the votes freely. What attracted our attention is that there is no heavy security measures at the polling stations.
Voters' turnout was high at midday, and the polling stations will open until 10 a.m. About 7,000 candidates are competing for 250 seats in the parliament in an election that is considered as a step forward towards reforms in the country. This is Sousan Badr from the polling station at Syrian radio and television.
Dr. Mahmoud Al-Abrash, Speaker of the outgoing People's Assembly, asserted that the elections under the new constitution express the wish of the Syrian people to continue the process of comprehensive reform. As he cast his vote in one of the election centers in Damascus, Al-Abrash said this process was a real translation of the political pluralism guaranteed by the new constitution and provided for in the new election law.
These elections have come within the defined period provided for in the new constitution. They expressed keenness for the Syrian leadership to continue the reform process, which started more than 10 years ago. The people who have come to cast their votes show once more their faith in the new homeland sought by all Syrians.
Prime Minister Adel Safar has asserted during voting that the coming government will be set according to the results of the current elections and according to programs capable of meeting the ambitions of the citizens. Safar added that these elections came in a critical era for the Syrians and in a context of political, economic and social reforms.
The legislative elections come in a historical phase where comprehensive reform has taken place in the political, economic and social fields. Holding these elections is considered a national duty. They deeply root the principles of the parliamentarian standards, and I call on all the nationalists to choose their best candidates to represent them, as the new council will play a great role in controlling the performance of the government within an atmosphere of political pluralism.
Also, Minister of Information Dr. Adnan Mahmoud affirmed that the elections were being carried out in a transparent atmosphere, showing that Syria is going ahead in the process of reform and confronting terrorism. As he cast his vote in the building of Al-Ba'ath daily newspaper, he pointed out that 200 mass media continue to follow up on the election process witnessed in Syria today. Judge Khalaf Al-Azzawi, chairman of the Higher Election Committee, toured several election centers and asserted that the process was going on according to regulations.
We visited election centers in Damascus this morning. We made some remarks and directed the heads of the election centers and subsidiary committees to deal with them. We witnessed enthusiastic participation in the process according to the law of legislative elections.
The elections are followed up by more than 200 media outlets and more than 100 political, intellectual, legal and information figures from Arab and foreign countries. Our correspondents followed the tour of some of these figures in various election departments.
We came to view the election process in Syria. We came from Jordan in order to be assured about the Syrian democratic process. We found that the Syrian people are following the road of democracy, united against all foreign powers.
This is the first election center we visit. It seems that there is democratic movement and extensive popular activity. The elections are going ahead in favor of the Syrian people and their will, which will be embodied in the People's Assembly through the ballot boxes.
Today we witnessed a democratic turnout in Syria as the elections are held in the same time as the Syrian leadership has promised. All the citizens are carrying out their duty, their legal right to elect the representatives. This is a noble act. I compared these elections to those held in Europe and I found the results positive.
So far, we have visited 2 election centers and found them full of citizens who have come to cast their votes. It is very clear that this is a vital process. We wish Syria to flourish in peace.
The elections of the People's Assembly in Syria is a great challenge to the plot being hatched against Syria by international, Atlantic and Arab conspirators. Thank God that Syria has proved capable of foiling all challenges and consolidating national activity. Before we came, we had imagined that we would see massacres in the streets. In fact, the elections are carried out quietly and normally in a stable situation. Citizens are taking part and nothing disturbing appears anywhere, as the false reports have claimed.
President Bashar al-Assad sent a couple of felicitations to President Vladimir Putin of Federal Russia. The president expressed wishes of success to Mr. Putin in shouldering his high responsibility and wished further success, progress and flourishing to the friendly Russian people. Putin was earlier sworn in for office this morning as President of Federal Russia. In a speech after the oath, he asserted that the priorities of his work in the coming period include the preservation of Russia's security, interests and ambitions of millions of Russian citizens. He asserted that the support of the Russian people would contribute to the solution of the most difficult problems. Russia, who has regained its strength and dignity as a major power as a result of joint work and efforts. Every citizen has a role to play for progress and the construction of a strong economic base and an active civil community. Foreign Minister Walid Al-Moallem received this morning General Robert Moe, chairman of the UN mission of observers in Syria. The minister welcomed the work of the mission and stressed Syria's continuous keenness to facilitate the task of the mission according to its authorization. He also stressed the importance of professional objectivity in the work of the mission, which should report the real situation in Syria to the international community away from the politicization of the Syrian file in the UN Security Council. General Moe in turn of the work of the mission and express appreciation for Syria's cooperation, which facilitated the work of the mission and its freedom of movement without any blocks. He also offered condolences over the death of Syrian victims in recent events. And with this, we end our news for today. For more news and details about Syria and the region, you can visit our website in English, www.syriaonline.sy. Thank you for watching and goodbye.